Hello everyone, this is your loving host, radio and TV personality Dr. Afshan Hashmi, live from her studio in Rockville, Maryland, USA. And friends, I wanted to remind you that these are my two books and they both were Amazon's bestsellers. So please go and buy these two books and give me an honest review. And for my second book, The Outbreak of a Monstrous Infection, I want a movie to be made so all those Hollywood, Bollywood, Netflix, Roku, Apple Plus, Amazon producers, and whoever makes movies and TV serials and web series, you can contact me at Afshan at drafshanhashmi.com and I will give you a very reasonable price. Having said that, friend, this book was also hot number one new release on Amazon, and through the sale of these books and sponsorships I finance these kind of programs, as it takes lot of energy to make these kind of programs. Having said that, friends, please give me sponsorship for this program, because this program is syndicated as a docu series to more than 300 million listeners worldwide. And just think, if your product will be promoted in such a grand way and also in a very very reasonable price, and you can contact me at Afshan at drafshanhashmi.com. Having said that, friends, today I'm starting a new series on my doco series, and that is crime stories. And the first story which I have chosen is that of the murder of Alexander Litvinenko, and here it is. And friends, here I want to add a disclaimer that I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I just want take it as an entertainment, and I just did my own independent research and came up with whatever I will say in this program. Having said that, friend, first, since Alexander Litvinenko was poisoned by polonium, I first want to tell my viewers and listeners and everyone that what is polonium. And for that I went to CDC. And for that I went to CDC websites, and I got frequently asked questions about polonium 210, and this is what it is. And let me read it so that people can better understand what polonium poisoning is. What is polonium 210? 210 210 is a radioactive material that occurs in nature at very low levels. Po-210 results from the natural radioactive decay of uranium, which is commonly found in Sierra Nevada granite. Po-210 emits alpha particles, which makes its decay to form a stable isotope of lead. The alpha particles carry high amounts of energy, which can damage or destroy genetic material in cells inside the body. Po-210 is considered to be one of the most hazardous radioactive materials known, but it must be breathed in or eaten to exert its toxic effects. Your skin or a piece of paper is enough to stop the radiation emitted by Po-210. What are common uses of polonium 210? Po-210 is used in some devices to eliminate static electricity in processes such as rolling paper, manufacturing sheet plastics, and spinning synthetic fibers. How is Po-210 measured? The concentration of Po-210 in water is measured in picocurie per liter. A picocurie is a unit of measure for radioactivity in air and water. This represents the amount of radiation that is emitted from a radioactive substance such as Po-210. A picocurie is 1 million millionth or a trillionth of a curie. Polonium in water. What is considered a safe concentration of 4 to 10 in water? It is very unusual for groundwater to have concentrations of 4 to 10 greater than 1 picocurie per liter. The US Environmental Protection Agency has not established drinking water standards specifically for 4 to 10. However, the maximum contaminated level for alpha radioactivity in drinking water is 15 pico per liter. The maximum contaminant level is the concentration of a contaminant that EPA considers protective of public health. If someone lived to be 70 years old and drank 2 liters of water per day, maximum contaminant levels are regulatory concentrations. Is the public water supply at risk in the Lanoonton Valley, Nevada? The public water supplies in Nevada's Lohontan Valley are not at risk because the public supply water well contains only zero point 0.2 picocurry per liter, below the EPA maximum contaminant level of 1 picocurry per liter. Families whose well water has been shown to have concentrations of 4 to 10 above 15 picocurry per liter should consider treating water with a properly functioning reverse osmosis system before drinking it, using it for cooking or watering material. So these were some frequently asked questions about polonium 210 from the CDC website. And now, friends, I read a very interesting article about Alexander Litvinenko's murder was the stuff of spy novels. Now it's straining UK Russian relations. And this was written by McLaren Leah, and the title of this article was Poisoned Diplomacy. And here I will read little bit from it. Alexander Litvinenko's murder was the stuff of spy novels. Now it's straining UK Russian relations. You may succeed in silencing one man, but the howl of protest from around the world, Mr. Putin, will reverberate in your ears for the rest of your life. These words spoken by the Russian descendant Alexander Litvinenko on his deathbed at University College Hospital in London nearly a decade ago seem as prescient today as they were ominous then. The story of Litvinenko's dramatically foreshortened life is the stuff of spy novels. The subsequent public inquiry into his death by the British government, which concluded last week, does nothing to dispel the myth. Last week, the retired High Court Judge Sir Robert Owen this article was published. It, let me see if a date is there. No, there is no date over here. The story of Litvinenko's dramatically foreshortened life is the stuff of spy novels. The subsequent public inquiry into his death by the British government, which concluded last week, does nothing to dispel the myth. Last week, the retired High Court Judge Sir Robert Owen concluded in a 327-page report that the number of Litvenko was, in his view, an act of state sponsored terrorism by the Russian government and was almost certainly approved both by the head of the Federal Security Service FSB and Vladimir Putin. Prime Minister David Cameron condemned the plot, calling it an unacceptable breach of international law. He said he would consider taking further steps against Russia, but went on to concede that the UK must maintain some sort of relationship with Russia in order to bring an end to the crisis in Syria, a process he described himself approaching with clear eyes and a cold heart. Cameron's critics have urged him to do more in the wake of the inquiry. Observer columnist Will Hutton condemned Cameron's reaction as beneath, feeble, and a threat to British law and order. Labour MP Ian Austin told the press, Putin is an unreconstructed KGB thug and gangster who murders his opponents in Russia and, as we know, on the streets of London, and nothing announced today is going to make the blindest bit of difference. Unsurprisingly, Putin's defenders remained unrepentant. A spokesperson for the Kremlin dismissed the findings as a joke, and Russia's ambassador to London, Alexander Yakovenko, after a meeting, the Foreign Office called the report a whitewash. Litvinenko fled Russia with his family after publicly accusing his superiors in the FSB of murder. He had been granted political asylum in the UK and lived in London since 2000. While in London, he worked as a journalist and authored two books, both of which were intensely critical of Vladimir Putin and accused the Russian secret services of staging several acts of terrorism to bring him to power. Litvinenko fell ill just hours after having tea at the Millennium Hotel in London with former KGB agents Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Koftin on November 1, 2006. The three men had met to discuss the possibility of Litvinenko taking on private security work. Litvinenko reportedly believed he could trust Logovoy because he was an associate of Boris Berezovsky, a fellow Russian descendant and enemy of Putin who also lived in the UK. Berezovsky was found dead in his house in Ascot with a ligature around his neck in 2013. Police were unable to determine whether his death was murder or suicide. According to the inquiry, Legovoy and his associates may have been plotting Litvinenko's murder as early as 2004. After the 2006 meeting, Legovoy returned to Germany, where he lived and worked and fell ill for several days, during which time he said he had probably been exposed to some of the poison which killed Litvinenko. Litvinenko died on November 23, 2006, surrounded by his family in hospital. The day after his death, Sergei Abeltsev, a member of the Russian State Duma, stood up in the Russian parliament and announced that the deserved punishment reached the traitor. I am confident that this terrible death will be a serious warning to traitors of all colors wherever they are located. In Russia, they do not pardon treachery. President Putin himself bemusedly noted on the same day that Mr. Litvinenko is unfortunately not Lazarus. The inquest into Litvinenko's murder found that he died of radiation syndrome caused by a lethal dose of polonium 210. He was the first known victim of such a poisoning, and the postmortem undertaken on his body has been described as the most dangerous autopsy ever taken in British history. Doctors wore protective suits and breathed through special filters. During a frantic police investigation that followed, British police sealed off several locations in central London where Litvinenko had been on the day he fell ill. At the Millennium Hotel, they found a teapot with an off the charts reading for polonium 210. A few months later, in January 2007, British officials announced that police had solved the case. Soon after, the government submitted an extradition request asking that Andrei Lukovoy be returned to the UK to stand trial for Litvinenko's murder. The Kremlin refused the request, calling it unconstitutional. In the 10 years since Litvenko's widow Marina has waged a tireless campaign to seek justice for her murdered husband. Litvenko's murder proved a powerful catalyst in the cooling of Russian British relations in the post Cold War era. But will the new inquiry have any effect on Britain's reluctant ally Vladimir Putin apart from poisoning relations further? It seems unlikely. So this was little bit about the case, and now I will read and let you know that who Alexander Litvenko is, and this is from Wikipedia, and here it is. Alexander Valetorovich Litvenko, 30th August 1962 or 4 December 1962 to 23 November 2006, was a British naturalized Russian defector and former officer of the Russian Federal Security Service FSB, who specialized in tackling organized crime. A prominent critic of Russian President Vladimir Putin, he advised British intelligence and coined the term mafia state. In November 1998, Litvinenko and several other FSB officers publicly accused their superiors of ordering the assassination of the Russian oligarch Boris Berezovsky. Litvinenko was arrested the following March on charges of exceeding the authority of his position. He was acquitted in November 1999 but rearrested before the charges were again dismissed in 2000. He fled with his family to London and was granted asylum in the United Kingdom, where he worked as a journalist, writer, and consultant for the British intelligence services. During his time in Boston, Lincolnshire, Litvinenko wrote two books: Blowing Up Russia, Terror from Within the Lubyanka Criminal Group, wherein he accused the Russian secret services of staging the Russian apartment bombings in 1999 and other acts of terrorism in an effort to bring Vladimir Putin to power. He also accused Putin of ordering the assassination of the Russian journalist Anna Politkovskaya in 2006. On 1 November 2006, Litvinenko suddenly fell ill and was hospitalized after poisoning by polonium 210. He died from the poisoning on 23rd November. The events leading up to this are a matter of controversy, spawning numerous theories relating to his poisoning and death. A British murder investigation pointed to Andrew Lukovoy, a former member of Russia's Federal Protective Service (FSO), as the main suspect. Dmitry Kovatin was later named as a second suspect. The United Kingdom demanded that Lugovoy be extradited. However, Russia denied the extradition as the Russian constitution prohibits the extradition of Russian citizens, leading to a straining of relations between Russia and the United Kingdom. After Litvinenko's death, his wife Marina, aided by biologist Alexander Litvinenko, pursued a vigorous campaign through the Litvinenko's Justice Foundation. In October 2011, she won the right for an inquest into her husband's death to be conducted by a coroner in London. The inquest was repeatedly set back by issues relating to examinal evidence. A public inquiry began on 27 January 2015 and concluded in January 2016 that Litvinenko's murder was carried out by the two suspects and that they were probably acting under the direction of the FSB and with the approval of President Vladimir Putin and then FSB Director Nikolai Patrushev. In the 2021 case Carter versus Russia, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that Russia was responsible for his death and ordered the country to pay 100,000 euros in damages. So this was little bit about Alexander Litvinenko. And now I will read little bit about his early life and career. Alexander Litvenko was born in the Russian city of Varoza in 1962. After he graduated from a Nalchik Secondary School in 1980, he was drafted into the internal troops of the Ministry of Internal Affairs as a private. After a year of service, he matriculated in the Kirov Higher Command School in Valley de Kavkaz. In 1981, Litvenko married Natalia, an accountant with whom he had a son, Alexander, and a daughter, Sonia. This marriage ended in divorce in 1994, and in the same year, Litvenko married Marina, a ballroom dancer and fitness instructor with whom he had a son, Anatoly. After graduation in 1985, Litvenko became a platoon commander in the Derezhinsky division of the Soviet Ministry of Internal Affairs. He was assigned to the 4th Company of 4th Regiment, where among his duties was the protection of valuable cargo while in transit. In 1986, he became an informant when he was recruited by the MVD's KGB counterintelligence section, and in 1988 he was officially transferred to the 3rd Chief Directorate of the KGB military counterintelligence. Later that year, after studying for a year at the Novosibirsk military counterintelligence school, he became an operational officer and served in KGB military counterintelligence until 1991. Career in Russian security services. In 1991, Litvenko was promoted to the central staff of the Federal Counterintelligence Service, specializing in counter-terrorist activities and infiltration of organized crime. He was awarded the title of Mir Veteran for operations conducted with the Moscow Criminal Investigation Department, the Mir. Litvenko also saw active military service in many of the so-called hotspots of the former USSR and Russia. During the First Chechen War, Litvenko planted several FSB agents in Chechnya. Although he was often called a Russian spy by Western press throughout his career, he was not an intelligence agent and did not deal with secrets beyond information on operations against organized criminal groups. Litvenko met Boris Berezovsky in 1994 when he took part in investigation into an assassination attempt on the oligarch. He later was responsible for the oligarch's security. Litvenko employment under Berezovsky and other security services created a conflict of interest, but such practice is usually tolerated by the Russian state. In 1997, Litvenko was promoted to the FSB Directorate of Analysis and Suppression of Criminal Groups with the title of Senior Operational Officer and Deputy Head of the 7th Section. Conflict with FSB leadership. During his work in the FSB, Litvenko discovered numerous connections between top leadership of Russian law enforcement agencies and Russian mafia groups such as the Solsevo gang. He wrote a memorandum about this issue for Boris Yeltsin. Bervasco arranged a meeting for him with FSB Director Mikhail Barzokov and Deputy Director of Internal Affairs Ovi Chikhinovkov to discuss the corruption problem. However, this had no effect. Litvenko gradually realized that the entire system was corrupted from the top to the bottom. He explained if your partner billed you or a creditor did not pay or a supplier did not deliver, where did you turn to complain? When force became a commodity, there was always demand for it. Roofs Krasha appeared people who sheltered and protected your business. First, it was provided by the mob, then by the police, and soon even our own guys realized what was what, and then the rivalry began among gangsters, cops, and the agency for market share. As the police and the FSB became more competitive, they squeezed the gangs out of the market. However, in many cases, competition gave way to cooperation and the services became gangsters themselves. On 25th July 1998, Berwski introduced Litvinenko to Vladimir Putin. He said, "Go see Putin, make yourself known, see what a great guy we have installed with your help." On the same day, Putin replaced Nikolai Kovalyov as the director of the Federal Security Service with help from Berwski. Litvenko reported to Putin on corruption in the FSB, but Putin was unimpressed. Litvenko said to his wife after the meeting, "I could see in his eyes that he hated me." Litvenko said that he was doing an investigation of Uzbek drug barons who received protection from the FSB, and Putin tried to stall the investigation to save his reputation. On November 13, 1998, Berwski wrote an open letter to Putin in Commersat. He accused four senior officers of the Directorate of Analysis and Suppression of Criminal Groups of ordering his assassination. Major General Yevgeny Kolekhov and Stefanon Kamyshenkov and N. Yenin. 4 days later, on 17th November, Litvinenko and four other officers appeared together in a press conference at the Russian news agency Interfax. All officers worked for both FSB in the Directorate of Analysis and Separation of Criminal Groups. They repeated the allegations made by Berwski. The officers also said they were ordered to kill Mikhail Trapashkin, who was also present at the press conference, and to kidnap a brother of the businessman Omar Brelov. In 2007, Sergei Doranko provided the Associated Press and the Wall Street Journal with the complete copy of an interview he conducted in April 1998 for ORT, a television station, with Litvenko and his fellow employees. The interview, of which only experts were broadcast in 1998, shows the FSB officers who were disguised in masks or dark glasses claimed that their bosses had ordered them to kill, kidnap, or frame prominent Russian politicians and business people. After holding the press conference, Litvenko was dismissed from the FSB. Later, in an interview with Yelena Drogobova, Putin said that he personally ordered the dismissal of Litvenko, stating, "I fired Litvenko and disbanded his unit because FSB officers should not stage press conferences. This is not their job and they should not make internal scandals public." Litvenko also believed that Putin was behind his arrest. He said, "Putin had the power to decide whether to pass my file to the prosecutors or not. He always hated me, and there was a bonus for him. By throwing me to the wolves, he distanced himself from Boris Berezovsky in the eyes of FSB journals." Poisoning and death. On 1st November 2006, Litvinenko suddenly fell ill. On 3rd November, he was admitted to Barnard General Hospital in London. He was then moved to University College Hospital for intensive care. His illness was later attributed to poisoning with radionuclide polonium 210 after the Health Protection Agency found significant amount of the rare and highly toxic element in his body. Litvenko met with two former agents early on the day he fell ill. Dmytro Kovtun and Antia Logovoy, though both denied any wrongdoing. A leaked U.S. diplomatic cable revealed that Kovtun had left polonium traces in the house and car he had used in Hamburg. The men also introduced Litvinenko to a tall, thin man of Central Asian appearance called Vladislav Solenko, whom Logovoy said was a business partner. Legovoy is also a former bodyguard of Russian ex-acting Prime Minister Yegor Gaidar, who also suffered from a mysterious illness in November 2006. Later, Litvenko had lunch at Itso, a sushi restaurant in Piccadilly, in London, with an Italian acquaintance and nuclear waste expert Mario Scramella, with whom he discussed alleged allegations regarding Italy's Prime Minister Romano Prodi. Scramella, attached to the Mitrokin Commission investigating alleged KGB penetration of Italian politics, claimed to have information on the assassination of Lena Polkovskaya, 48, a journalist who was killed at her Moscow apartment building in October 2006. Marina Litvinenko, his widow, accused Moscow of orchestrating the murder. Though she believes the order did not come from Putin himself, she does believe it was done at the behest of the authorities and announced that she will refuse to provide evidence to any Russian investigator out of fear that it would be misused or misrepresented. In a court hearing in London in 2015, a Scotland Yard lawyer concluded that the evidence suggests that the only credible explanation is, in one way or another, the Russian state is involved in Litvinenko's murder. Death and final statement. Before his death, Litvinenko said, "You may succeed in silencing one man, but the howl of protest from around the world, Mr. Putin, will reverberate in your ears for the rest of your life." On 22nd November 2006, Litvinenko's medical staff at University College Hospital reported Litvinenko had suffered a major setback due to either heart failure or an overnight heart attack. He died on 23rd November. The following day, Putin publicly stated Mr. Litvinenko is unfortunately not Lazarus. Scotland Yard stated that inquiries into the circumstances how Litvinenko became ill would continue. On 24 November 2006, a statement was released posthumously in which Litvinenko named Putin as the man behind the poisoning. Litvinenko's friend Alice Golfar, who was also the chairman of Boris Berezovsky's Civil Liberties Fund, claimed Litvinenko had dictated to him 3 days earlier, and Ray Nekrasov said his friend Litvinenko and Litvinenko's lawyer had composed the statement in Russian on 21 November and translated into English. Putin disputed the authenticity of this note while attending a Russia EU summit in Helsinki and claimed it was being used for political purpose. Goldfarb later stated that Litvinenko on his deathbed had instructed him to write a note in good English in which Putin was to be accused of his poisoning. Goldfarb also stated that he read the note of Litvinenko in English and Russian, and Litvinenko agreed with every word of it and signed it. His autopsy took place on 1st December at the Royal London Hospital Institute of Pathology. It was attended by three physicians, including one chosen by the family and one from the Foreign Office. Litvinenko was buried at Highgate Cemetery, West Side in North London on 17 December. The police treated his death as a murder, although the London coroner's inquest was yet to be completed. In an interview with the BBC broadcast on 16 December 2006, Yuri Shivot said that Litvinenko had created a due diligence report investigating the activities of an unnamed senior Kremlin officer on behalf of a British company looking to invest dozens of millions of dollars in a project in Russia, and that the dossier contained damaging information about the senior Kremlin officer. He said he was interviewed about his allegations by Scotland Yard detectives investigating Litvinenko's murder. British media reported that the poisoning and consequent death of Litvinenko was not widely covered in the Russian news media. UK criminal investigation on January 20, 2007, British police announced that they had identified the man they believe poisoned Alexander Litvinenko. The suspected killer was captured on cameras at Heathrow as he flew into Britain to carry out the murder. The man in question was introduced to Litvinenko as Vladislav. As of January 2007, British officials said police had solved the murder of Litvinenko. They discovered a hot teapot at London's Millennium Hospital with an off the charts reading for polonium 210, the radioactive material used in the killing. In addition, a senior official said investigators had concluded the murder of Litvinenko was a state sponsored assassination orchestrated by Russian security services. The police want to charge former Russian spy Andrei Lugovoy, who met Litvinenko on 1st November 2006, the day officials believe the lethal dose of polonium 210 was administered. On the same day, the Guardian reported that the British government was preparing an extradition request asking the Andriy Lugovoy he returned to the UK to stand trial for Litvinenko's murder on 22nd May 2007. The Crown Prosecution Service called for the extradition of Russian citizen Andrei Lugovoy to the UK on charges of murder. Lugovoy dismissed the claims against him as politically motivated and said he did not kill Litvenko. British police investigation resulted in several suspects for the murder, but in May 2007, the British Director of Public Prosecutions, Ken MacDonald, announced that his government would seek to extradite Andrea Lugovoy, the chief suspect in the case from Russia. On 28 May 2007, the British Foreign Office officially submitted a request to the government of Russia for the extradition of Lugovoy to face criminal charges in the UK. On 2nd October 2011, the Sunday Times published an article wherein the chief prosecutor who investigated the murder of Litvinenko, Lord MacDonald of River Glavin, publicly spoke of his suspicion that the murder was a directed execution carried out by Russia. Until that time, British public officials had stopped short of directly accusing Russia of involvement in the poisoning. It had all the hallmarks of a state directed execution committed on the streets of London by a foreign government, MacDonald added. In January 2015, it was reported in the British media that the National Security Agency had intercepted communications between Russian government agents in Moscow and those who carried out what was called a state execution in London. The recorded conversation allegedly proved that the Russian government was involved in Litvinenko's murder and suggested that the motive was Litvinenko's revelations about Vladimir Putin links with the criminal underworld. On January 2016, the Home Office published the Litvinenko inquiry report into Litvinenko's death. So this was about Alexander Litvinenko and how he was murdered. So friends, this is a new crime stories segment which I have started in my docu series, and if there is a good response, I will continue it because it takes lot of energy and money to research these kind of cases. Having said that, friends, there is a book, very interesting book. and I just got it from Amazon. And it is a very expensive poison, the assassination of Alexander Litvinenko and Putin's war into the West by Luke Harding. So this is the cover of this book, and I will read this book and I will review this book in forthcoming weeks. So keep an eye on that. And then there is some review of this book which was published. So I will read those reviews, and my personal thoughts on this book will come in forthcoming weeks. Having said that, friends, let me read some a review. And this is the review a very expensive poison, the assassination of Alexander Litvenko and Putin's war with the West by Luke Harding. And this is the review, and I will read little bit this review. Harding, the Snowden Files, a foreign correspondent for The Guardian, covers the 2006 poisoning of Russian exile Litvinenko in informative detail and sensationalist style, drawing on interviews, original reportage, and a British public library. Harding reiterates the inquiry's findings. Litvinenko was the victim of a political assassination that was indistinguishable from a gangland hit. Born in 1962, Litvinenko had been an officer of the FSB, Russia's National Security Service, and KGB successor until he tipped off a friend oligarch Boris Berezovsky about a planned attempt on Berezovsky's life. Fleeing with the wrath of Berezovsky's would-be assassins in 2000, Litvinenko and his family found refuge in London, where Litvinenko became a security advisor, MI6 informant, and descendant, speaking out against Russian President Vladimir Putin and his mafia state. A casual meeting with two business associates, Andrei Lukovoy and Dmitry Kovton, cut short in Litvinenko's activities. According to forensic experts, following a trail of radiation, the two had been transporting polonium, which ended up in Litvinenko's tea, killing him within weeks. The public inquiry found that Litvinenko was certainly killed by Lugovoy and Kovtum, the flunkies of an FSB operation that was probably approved by Putin. Harding suitably conveys the shocking, violent, and tragic story of a man whose murder has gone unpunished. So, this was a review, and this review came in Publishers Weekly in December 19, 2016. So, this was, friends, little bit about Alexander Litvinenko, who he was and how he was murdered. A little story which I in crime story segment I have covered this, and this story intrigued me a lot, and I was interested in sharing it with my viewers and listeners. And if people like me discussing some crime stories, then I will see the response and then I will come up with some other stories. Having said that, friends, please go and buy these two books and give me an honest review, and also give me sponsorship for this show, because this show is syndicated worldwide to 300 million listeners. And just imagine, if you give me sponsorship, your product will be promoted in such a grand way in a very reasonable price. And you can contact me at Afshan at drafshanhashmi.com. Having said that, friends, cheers and bye bye, and see you in another episode of my docu series.